the inquiry into the sale of government assets. And we have Mr. Hugo Pat as our first witness today. Mr. Pat, do you wish to be sworn or to affirm? You promised it. Do you have there should be a, yes. Could you read that to us, please? Take the Bible in your right hand. The Bible is right there. Yeah. Yes.
I, Hugo Pat, swear, affirm that the testimony I shall give today before the Commission in the matters in question shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you. Just for the record, could you state your full name and your address, please?
Ugo Amilcar Pat, Pachacan Village, Corozal District.
Yes. Mr. Pat, you were the Minister of Natural Resources and Deputy Prime Minister over the period October 2020 through November 2000, October 2019 through November 2020.
Yes,
Is that
sir,
correct?
I was.
Yes. Could you describe for us your responsibilities as Minister of Natural Resources?
The Ministry of Natural Resources at the time had the overview of the National Estate section, which has to deal with national land. It had the purview as well of the issue of mining licenses. And it had at the time the issuance of permits for private subdivisions.
Yes.
Part of that responsibility as well, Mr. Chairman, was the issuance of licenses for pairs as well.
As part of your responsibilities for National Estate Section, you're responsible for approving the sale of public lands to private persons?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And also the grant of leases to public lands. That's correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Would you agree with me that the demand for public lands, for lots from the public, greatly exceeds the supply?
We don't have an exact figure as it pertains to national land. So that in terms of availability, the data was not readily available at the time.
But in terms of the day-to-day demands upon you as the minister, you receive more requests for land than you're able to allot?
Yeah, the demand for land in this country is really a huge one. So that on a day-to-day basis, the applications that are received at the ministry are really large numbers.
Yes. Is there a policy that prioritizes or sets criteria as to whom should get first?
At the time, we took over when there was a huge backlog, if I may call it, so that when I was assigned that ministry, we basically processed applications as had been received.
Is it usual to get multiple applications from the same individual?
You would have instances, Mr. Chairman, when applications do come in that effect.
Multiple applications from the same person?
Yes, there are persons in this country that own quite a number of parcels of land.
Yes, and are continuously applying to acquire more from the government?
You have instances where people would come in and apply. You would have other instances where people will want to regularize the tenure of the land that they have developed.
Yes. But would you have instances where, say, a dozen lots are approved to a single individual within months?
I won't really know. We process volumes. If I may give just a single statistic, back in 2019, we processed some 13,000 applications. 2020, if the figure was not that, it was close to that. So in terms of being able to identify who gets a parcel of land, it's pretty much difficult for me.
What about the turnaround time for the applications? Or how long does it normally take?
Well, we instituted a system where we had a one-day delivery of service. This did not happen only at the level of the National Estate Section. It happened at the level of the registry section, where you deal with private transfers.
So there were instances where an individual could go in with multiple transfers on one day and get all of them done the same day.
When we instituted the system, it was like a testing system, so that when applications were received, we were just testing the system to see how it was working. It was the first time that such a program was instituted, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. You were assigned a new vehicle in February of 2020, is that right?
That is exactly so.
It's a 2020 Toyota pickup truck?
Yes, sir.
That was purchased by the Ministry of Natural Resources?
To my knowledge, yes.
Yeah. And it was purchased from Mr. Emil Torres's company?
I really wouldn't know where the purchase came from.
When did you take possession of the vehicle?
That was in early February, Mr. Chairman.
Early February. And when did you deliver up possession of that vehicle?
It was close to election that I handed over the possession of the vehicle.
Election was November 11th.
It was around that time
Around the 11th November you handed it in?
It would be in early November, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Chairman.
To whom did you deliver it?
This was left at the ministry.
This is the Ministry of Natural Resources?
Yes, sir.
In whose care?
When I left, I left the vehicle, and I indicated that it was around election time, and so I was heading to my constituency.
You approached the Prime Minister for permission to buy the vehicle?
Yes, I did, Chairman.
Do you remember when?
With exact date, I wouldn't recall, but I spoke to him. I was in late October, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Chairman, with reference to...
Late October, yes.
With reference to a request that I had made to FinSec to purchase the vehicle.
So you had first approached the Financial Secretary?
That is exactly so, Mr. Chairman.
And you asked him for permission to buy the vehicle?
I had made a request.
What was the request?
To purchase the vehicle I was assigned to.
Did you offer a price?
No, sir.
And after you approached the Financial Secretary, you approached the Prime Minister directly?
Well, he called me, and he did inform me that there was a policy in place with reference to the sale of vehicles, but that he would make a special request on my behalf.
A special request? This is Mr. Waite, the Financial Secretary, or the Prime Minister?
I spoke to the Prime Minister.
But who would he make a request of?
I would want to think that it would be FinSec.
But the authority rests with him. It's the Financial Secretary that has to make requests of him. Isn't that so?
I really don't know how the ministry operates, but as far as I'm concerned, he told me that he would check with reference to the vehicle with FinSec.
He would check. He never said that he approved it?
He did tell me that he would give me consideration and that he would talk to FinSec.
But give consideration means that he will think about it or that he is in favor of it.
I would want to think that it's in favor of it.
You weren't sure?
At the time, I wasn't.
The approval letter was issued in the name of one Juvencio Herrera. Who is Juvencio Herrera?
Juvencio Herrera is a friend of mine, Mr. Chairman.
You made a request for the approval to be issued in the name of Mr. Herrera instead of your name?
At the time that I made the request, Mr. Chairman, I had a conversation with Mr. Juvencio, and I was having some financial difficulties, and so this conversation arose as a consequence of that conversation. And I indicated to Juvencio that I had made a request for this vehicle, but that due to health emergencies, I was not in a position to get the vehicle, to purchase the vehicle myself. And so that when I indicated this to Juvencio, he did agree to purchase the vehicle on my behalf.
So he purchased it for you?
Yes, he did. That was a verbal agreement that I had with him.
So when you say he purchased it for you, you mean he would use his own monies to pay for it?
Yes, sir.
And you were supposed to pay him back?
That's exactly the case, sir.
So you made a loan from Mr. Herrera?
Yes, sir.
What were the terms of this loan?
The terms of the loan was that the first condition was that as part of the security, he would keep the vehicle for himself. You see, Mr. Chairman, life is not guaranteed, and so I did not want something, the worst to happen to me, and then you have Mr. Juvencio having this loan, this money to me, and there being no kind of collateral.
So you put the car in Mr. Juvencio's name?
That is exactly the case.
But what were the terms for repayment of the loan, and how much was the loan for?
It was for $65,000.
And how was the $65,000 to be repaid?
This would have been repaid fully at the time that full payment was made. Then I would have had the vehicle to be transferred into my name.
Yes, but how was it to be repaid?
I would have made the arrangements for payment, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, but what are those arrangements? That's what I'm asking.
You see, at the time, I had some finances. I didn't have the complete finances, and I would have secured the finances to make the full payment.
Yes, but you see, when most of us borrow money, we have to promise how we're going to pay it back. We're going to pay it back in so many monthly installments over such a period of time. Were there terms for the loan?
I don't think that that's the purview of the Commission, Mr. Chairman. Whatever private conversation I have with Mr. Juvencio.
Yeah, but I think that's for us to determine. That's why we're the Commission and you're the witness. So we'll make that determination. Could you answer the question, please?
I had an agreement up to February to make that commitment.
February, you mean February?
2021.
By February 2021, you would repay it. Do you know who paid for the vehicle?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
You never gave any instructions as to how payment was to be made for the vehicle?
No, Mr. Chairman.
So you're not aware that transfers were made by private individuals at the request of Mr. Kevin Lee?
No, sir.
Do you know who Mr. Kevin Lee is?
I do not know, Mr. Chairman.
Well, maybe you know him by his Chinese name. He's also let me get this right. And I don't know that I'll do justice to the pronunciation of it. It's Zhourongli, Mr. Zurong Lee. Do you know who that is?
No, Mr. Chairman.
You familiar with that name, any?
No, sir.
Would it surprise you to learn that over the period 23rd July 2020 to 3rd November 2020, just before the elections, the week before the elections, you had approved the transfer of some 10 parcels of land to Mr. Zurong Lee?
I really can't tell, Mr. Chairman. As I indicated, lands is a department that produces in volumes. So that when you talk on a monthly basis or an annual basis, the volumes are pretty much high. So getting a name or identifying a person within so many applications, it's pretty much impractical from my end.
Over the period July 2020 through November 2020, you transferred 8 lots on San Pedro to Mr. Zurong Lee. Do you remember that?
I do not remember, Mr. Chairman. I don't, as I said, individually, it will be very difficult for me to actually identify who got approved a parcel of land and who did not.
Are you surprised that the same Chinese gentleman with that name, Zurong Lee, was approved 8 lots?
I have no idea of who got approved and who did not get approved.
No, I understand that you have no idea of who got it, but the approvals were done by you as Minister of Natural Resources, were they not?
When applications are sent, are received, it takes a process, so that there is a process that has to be followed, and once that has gone through that vetting process as we speak, then the applications are recommended. And so once those are recommended, all that we do is just sign off on those.
So you just sign off on them automatically once they come on your desk?
Once it's recommended, I do, sir.
Would it come on your desk if it's not recommended?
Hardly there is any case that would be identified as such.
Does it surprise you that 8 lots on San Pedro would have been approved and recommended for the same individual?
I wouldn't know, sir, but all I can indicate is that we approved, we signed off on thousands of applications.
And isn't it also true that you refused thousands of them, that there are thousands of Belizeans waiting for lots as well?
Mr. Chairman, in terms of processing, I think there has been an outcry in terms of what it is that we process. At the time, as I indicated, we tried our best to process as much as we possibly could.
Certainly. But there are a lot of people that leave empty-handed. Isn't that so?
In terms of processing, Mr. Chairman, all I can indicate is that so long as an application is received and so long as that the land is available, then it's processed.
So the suggestion is that the needs of Belizeans for lots are being entirely met through the process, this processing.
I will say that while we did some improvements in terms of making sure that we make as much land available to our Belizean public, there is a lot of room for improvement, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. And wouldn't it be a cause for concern that this single individual can have such ready access to government lands?
As long as you're a Belizean, you're entitled to a parcel, you're entitled to land in this country.
Yes,
Mr.
but
Chairman.
what about 12 parcels? Are you entitled to 12 parcels?
In terms of processing, Mr. Chairman, I really don't know. Whenever an application is received, it is vetted, and once the vetting is completed, then it's sent to me.
At the end of the day, the authority to dispose of national lands rests with the minister, does it not?
Yes, it does, sir.
So that the decision ultimately rests with you.
That is precisely so.
And you decided that you would favor Mr. Lee with all these parcels of lands over those months leading up to the election.
I do not recall that I favor Mr. Lee or if I favor anybody.
So
Mr.
you
Chairman.
don't consider this favored treatment?
We processed thousands of applications without due consideration if it was X, if it was Y, if it was a woman, if it was a man.
Would
So long as you are a Belizean, you're entitled to get a piece of land.
All right. What about 12 pieces? Do you recall that on 3rd November 2020 you approved 10.299 acres in Carmelita to Mr. Zurong Lee?
I do not recall, sir.
Do you recall that on the 27th October 2020 you transferred half acre in San Pedro to Mr. Zurong Lee?
I certainly do not recall, sir.
Do you recall that on the 3rd November 2020 as well, you also transferred 52.7 acres, 10-pound key registration section to Mr. Zurong Lee?
I do not recall, sir.
Do you recall that on the 14th August 2020, you transferred 2.04 acres on San Pedro to Mr. Zurong Lee?
I do not recall, sir.
Do you recall that on the same day, 14th August 2020, you also transferred a lot comprising 486.277 square meters on Kikaka to Mr. Zurong Lee?
I do not recall, sir.
Do you recall that on the 27th July 2020, you transferred a lot, parcel 8483, San Pedro to Mr. Zurong Lee?
I do not recall, sir.
What about on the 13th August 2020, another lot, parcel 8673 on San Pedro to Mr. Zurong Lee? Do you remember that?
I do not recall, sir.
And what about on the 23rd July 2020? You transferred two parcels, two lots on San Pedro, two more lots on San Pedro to Mr. Zurong Lee. The parcels 8564 and parcel 6807. Do you recall that?
I do not recall, sir.
And then on the 27th July, 2 days later, you transferred another lot on San Pedro to Mr. Zurong Lee, a parcel 6791. Do you remember that?
I do not recall, Mr. Chairman.
Does it surprise you that you would have approved and transferred so many lots to a single person?
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, whenever files are sent to us, it's because it has gone the process. Who makes an application or who does not make an application is not something that I tend to have a clear look at. Once the applications are received, then we sign off on those.
Is there room for that process to be abused?
I do not know that you can tell any Belizean that he or she is only entitled to one particular parcel of land.
No, he can buy it from private people as many as he wants. But this is not that. He's getting it from you, from the government. He's getting government resources.
As I indicated, Mr. Chairman, I do not recall the instances that...
Well, I tried to remind you of those instances just now. I know you say you don't recall them, but it doesn't mean they didn't take place, does it?
Mr. Chairman, as I said, for me to actually identify and peruse an application one by one, it would just be impractical. So that as best as we try to do in order to improve the efficiency of the system, in order to improve the services of the department, we try to expedite the process.
Yes, and expedite you did. Would you be surprised to learn that all these transfers in favor of Mr. Zurong Lee happened in one day?
Mr. Chairman, we expedited for 13,000 people, Belizeans, in 2019. And if I'm not mistaken, it will be close to that figure in 2020.
And you also failed to expedite for many thousand Belizeans as well.
As I indicated, Mr. Chairman, when I was assigned that ministry in 2018, there were a lot of applications that needed to be processed. So that my instructions were is to make sure that we processed as much as we possibly could.
In fact, when you left office in November 2011, you still left thousands of applications to be processed. Isn't that so?
The system does not, the system needs a lot of improvement, Mr. Chairman.
I know.
Indicated in many instances that the system was designed to process probably half the flow that we have now. So that certain changes have to be instituted in order to get improvement in the deliverables of those services.
Certainly. But you see, what concerns me is how this single individual was able to get done so much so quickly.
Mr. Chairman, we had, as I indicated, 13,000 Belizeans who got their documents processed. In 2020, I'm sure that the figure would have been the same. I don't see how I could favor one over another.
Well, certainly Mr. Lee seems to have been favored.
Belizeans are entitled to a piece of land.
You don't agree with me that Mr. Lee was favored? And he didn't get a piece of land. He got many pieces of lands all over the country.
I cannot indicate, sir, with certainty if he got land or not.
We're talking 8 lots in San Pedro, 1 acreage, 10 acres in Carmelita, 52 acres, 10 Pound Key, a lot in Kikaka, a lot in Lord's Bank, among others, Mr. Pat. You're not saying that this gentleman was not favored, was treated just like every ordinary Belizean in the processing of his applications, and that's just between July and November in the election year?
Mr. Chairman, as long as an application is received, as long as the application is vetted and it's recommended, then we sign off on those applications.
Who would have vetted and recommended Mr. Lee's applications?
When applications are received at the reception, it goes through a whole process.
Yes, who would have received it, vetted it, and made the recommendation to you on the basis of which you signed these transfers?
Applications are normally received at reception.
Yes, and then who vets it?
There are different sections within the department that has to go through before it reaches to our office.
I would expect so, and I'm trying to get a description from you as to exactly what those sections are and who are responsible for these very favorable recommendations in favor of Mr. Lee. You're trying to pass it off as business as usual. This, Mr. Pat, is not business as usual.
Well,
this is favored treatment for Mr. Lee, and I want to understand why it is that Mr. Lee was treated so favorably.
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, it is not my responsibility to actually find out who comes to the office and who does not come. There are people assigned different responsibilities, so that as long as an application is received, then it is received as such, and then it would go through the process. If the application is one that has a recommendation for the sale of that land, then the application is approved. If the application for some reason shows any kind of problems, for instance, if the land in question being applied is private land, then it is not approved. And so once the applications come in, then the process follows.
Yes. So you rely entirely on the process?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you do. Is it the case that you can expedite that process or intervene in that process for the benefit of certain favored persons?
No, Mr. Chairman. Our applications have to go through that process.
Yes, but are you as minister able to push it through the process in order to assist people you want to assist, such as your constituents?
In instances for my constituency, I have done it, Mr. Chairman.
I thought so. And is it the case that you did it for Mr. Lee as well?
Mr. Lee is not my constituent. I don't know who Mr. Lee is, sir.
Yes. So you only do it for your constituents. You don't do it for others.
That's for my constituents, Mr. Chairman.
Would it surprise you to learn that over the course of the year, running from October 2019 through November 2020. There were also a dozen transfers of government land to Mr. Lee via third parties.
I have no idea, Mr. Chairman.
You have parcel 2120 San Pedro, goes to Isaias Franco, and within the same day gets transferred to Mr. Lee.
I have no idea, Mr. Chairman.
You have parcel 8670, goes to a Wasani Castro, and then immediately to Mr. Lee within a matter of days.
I have no idea, Mr. Chairman.
And then you have a parcel 8657 goes to a Jafari Castro, and then within a short period goes to Mr. Lee.
I cannot recall, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. You recognize those names?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
The Castro name doesn't ring a bell.
I don't know anybody from that.
Okay.
And
What about parcel 6827 to a Miss Russell Usher and then to Mr. Lee? Same day again. You recognize the name Miss Russell Usher?
I don't, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. And parcel 8482 to Melanie Guerra and then to Mr. Lee.
I do not recall, Mr. Chairman.
And then parcel 12578 to Ishmael Novello and then to Mr. Lee.
I really don't recall, Mr. Chairman.
And parcel 8672 to Isabel Chi and then to Mr. Lee.
I cannot recall, Mr. Chairman.
And parcel 9348 to Kirian Asweta and then to Mr. Lee.
I cannot recall.
And parcel 1493, Consejo this time, because all those lots were San Pedro, to Mr. Hilbert and then to Mr. Lee.
I have no idea, Mr. Chairman.
And then parcel 1231 to Mr. Leo Vigildo Vasquez and then to Mr. Lee.
I have no idea, Mr. Chairman.
And parcel 827, Consejo again to Sergio Hall and then to Mr. Lee.
I have no idea, Mr. Chairman.
And a parcel 8624 to Joel Chi and then to Mr. Lee.
I have no idea.
Does it concern you that so many government lots were being transferred via third parties directly to Mr. Lee in such short periods of time?
Mr. Chairman, in terms of the transfers, if anybody buys a parcel of land, we're not in a position to indicate to the person who you will sell that land to or who you don't sell that land to. Whenever we issue any deeds, my position has always been that if you're going to sell a particular parcel of land, Mr. Chairman, consider the fact that you have children, that you will have a generation coming. But if it is that you have to decide between a life and a death situation, or if an emergency occurs, then if you have to decide, then you let go of land.
I understand that, and I would agree with what you say. There are circumstances where people will have to dispose of assets to meet circumstances in life. But what I've described here seems to be a well thought out scheme of diverting government resources into the hands of this single individual using the names of third parties or with the complicity of third parties.
Are you making any accusation that I am involved in any wrongdoing, Mr. Chairman?
No, I'm making no accusation. I'm asking you, how do you explain the sheer volume of these transfers that ended up in Mr. Lee? If you look at San Pedro alone, and you're looking at 20 lots to Mr. Lee. Why does a single individual want 20 lots in San Pedro? Why would the government facilitate his applications and requests for 20 lots?
I have no idea of what you're talking about, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I think those are my questions. I'll pass you to my friends. Mr. Blake.
Good morning, Mr. Blake.
How familiar are you with the land system and the process?
Well, I was there for 2 years. We instituted certain changes to adapt for an improved delivery of services. So pretty much from that end, I would be familiar with the system.
So being familiar with the system and the process, then can you just walk us through this step by step of where an application goes from being received at the reception, as you pointed out, to a final approval?
In detail, I can't really explain. As I indicated, there are different positions within the ministry, and each position is charged with a certain responsibility. From the level of us at the ministry, applications are received, and one of the first steps that were instituted is to make sure that the land that any person applies for is national land, and it is not a parcel of land that has any kind of conflict, if I may call it that way. From there, it is inputted into the system, and then it is eventually vetted for eventual recommendation to our office.
Okay, so then, well, being that you were the Minister of Natural Resources, don't you think based on past history of that ministry, you would have been more inclined to understand the full process as the minister who's responsible for putting his signature on documents?
Mr. Blake, at the time, as I indicated, there was a need for us to improve the deliverables of the system, so that my first task at the time was to make sure that we do certain changes. And so I'm no technocrat within the ministry, and so I had to rely on the very technical people of the ministry to institute changes to improve the delivery of services.
Okay. This recommendation phase or step in the process, how is that executed? Who initiates that?
Could you repeat that question?
The recommendation process as a part of the entire scope of the way things are done. How is that initiated, and who provides you with information saying that this is a recommended sale or transfer for you to sign off?
From our end, Mr. Blake, one of the primary concerns that we had at the time is that there were instances where more than one person got a particular land document for a parcel of land. And so we had at the time what we call duplication. And duplication eventually led to monetary implications to government. And so one of the primary concerns that at the time we had to address was precisely that. So that whenever an application was lodged onto the ministry, the first concern that we had to address, or the first issue that we had to address, is to make sure that the land in question being applied for was national land. And secondly, that the land in question was not a kind of land that would be claimed, if I may put it from that end, by more than one person. And so from my end, that was our primary concern.
So you're not familiar with how the recommendations are being done?
Once that happens, it's inputted into the system, and then there is a sequence within which it eventually reaches to our office.
So you're able to see the duplication if, I guess, the lot number or anything comes up, or the parcel number comes up again in the system. Are there any other red flags in the system to highlight when there's the same name as an applicant showing up multiple times in the system?
As far as I know, the primary concern was to ensure that any document that we issued was issued on the basis that we had that assurance that the land was national land.
All right, I'll take you back to the conversation on the purchase of the vehicle, and providing that you recognize that you had some financial constraints, why not rescind your request for the purchase of the vehicle at that time?
I made a request for the vehicle because I needed the vehicle for my personal use.
But why this vehicle? I mean, financial constraints being considered, you could have always purchased a vehicle on the market.
I made the request, Mr. Blake. That's all I could say at this point in time. Luke?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, morning, Mr.
Good morning, Mr. Martinez.
Yeah, good. Do you know Mr. Kevin Lee?
I do not know Mr. Lee.
You don't know him. What if I were to show you a footage of you and Kevin Lee in the parking lot in the Ministry of Natural Resources? Would you be able to say if that, if these two individuals are you and Kevin Lee in a discussion?
I meet a lot of people, Mr. Martinez, partly at the time for my work, and as a politician, we engage a lot of people.
Yeah, so what if I were to show you another footage of you and Mr. Lee having a conversation in the lobby at your ministry?
I do not recall meeting Mr. Lee.
Sure. As the minister, did you have the opportunity, a minister for 2 years, you said, in the Ministry of Natural Resources, to meet the staff at, in your ministry?
I did meet with our staff. I did not meet the entire staff of the ministry.
Sure. Can you identify any of the names that the chair had mentioned earlier, third parties? Can you identify any one of them as employee in the ministry while you were the minister?
Which names are you speaking about, Mr. Martinez?
I think you would have recalled those names. Can you remind him of those names?
What about Ms. Russell Usher?
I think Ms. Russell Usher works at the ministry.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Because earlier you mentioned that you did not know the individual.
The ministry has a quite a large staff, Mr. Martinez. So.
Sure.
And
Can you, yeah, so as the minister for 2 years, deputy prime minister, you've signed an oath when you took office. Can you explain the process of acquiring a parcel of land? We expect that you are able to explain that process. Can you kindly explain the process?
As far as my understanding goes, if Mr. Martinez, let's say for instance, Mr. Martinez wants, in this case yourself, if Mr. Luis Martinez wants to apply for a parcel of land, the first step that you do, you go into any of our offices and you lodge that application. Okay? After that application is received, it is then, as a first step, forwarded to a department, to a section within the department
Yes.
that looks at the availability of the land.
Yes.
in
Can you,
question.
yes, so can you don't have to give me the name of the individuals. Can you share with us the departments that goes through, that are involved in the cycle?
As I indicated, once the application is received, then it goes into, the system is automated, Mr. Martinez, so that as long as the application is received, there are processes that have to be sequenced. And once that happens, then it eventually reaches to our office. Remember, the lands department was automated back in 2006 or 2007. So that automation actually dictates how it is that you process a particular parcel of land.
Yes, so kindly continue with the process for us. Explain the entire process.
I am up for your instructions. You were asking me one question now and another after, so I need clearance as to what it
Yes,
is.
so
that you want.
kindly explain to us the process, land acquisition process, from when I submit an application up to when you sign it. Kindly explain.
Can you indicate to me what do you mean by land acquisition process?
Okay, so if I were to apply for a parcel of land, and what would be that process? Explain that process.
Mr. Luis Martinez, for instance, comes to the lands department. He applies for a particular parcel of land. He makes an application to the receptionist. The receptionist inputs the information into the system. The first step, as your application is received, would be to first indicate whether the land is national land or private land, or if there is any particular conflict or issue with the land. Eventually, it is taken through a sequence. And upon the completion of that sequence, it is determined whether the land is recommended or not.
Who determines the recommendation? Which office, which officer? We don't need his name or her name.
You would first, as I indicated, there are certain people that have to do certain checks. It's basically a checklist that you have to complete. So that whenever that checklist is completed, it eventually reaches to the office of the commissioner, and then from there it moves on to my office.
Can you share with us what would be on that checklist?
As far as I'm concerned, documentation has to be one. In terms of yourself, your identification, your information. You would have to have the information on the parcel, the status of the land in question, and once those are completed, it is forwarded for processing.
So you haven't reached up to when you have signed off on it. Continue to take us through to that.
It is a sequence, as I indicated, Mr. Martinez. I'm no technocrat. You see, whenever you are processing any document, you have to rely on your staff to do the job. If I were to pick up a particular application myself, I think you heard the chairman indicate that there was an outcry of people not being able to getting their land, people not being able to process their documents. If I were to do that process, the system would just plummet. Lands is a department that processes in volumes. On a monthly basis, we're speaking about 900 to probably 1,200 applications, so that it would be impractical on me to be able to actually micromanage in that ministry. It is for that reason that there is staff that are assigned different responsibilities, and so it is a whole team that is actually put in place to make sure that the system works.
Yeah, let's go back to the vehicle. You explained that the former Prime Minister had indicated to you that there is a policy. As the Deputy Prime Minister, would you happen to know that policy, what that policy would have been?
He did indicate to me that at the time they had sent a memorandum indicating that they were not going to be selling government vehicles, but that he would take my request as a special one.
Yes, you explained a memorandum. I'm asking you about policy. Are you aware of the policy? Policies, where would such policies come from? Would it be a cabinet decision?
I was the Minister of Natural Resources, not the Minister of Finance, Mr. Chair.
Yes, but you're a member of the cabinet.
Yes, sir, but I don't think it falls within my purview to question anybody from the Ministry of Finance.
So you wouldn't be bothered about the policy as long as your request is approved?
As I indicated, I was made to understand that there was a policy in place and that my request would be taken as a consideration. Yes. That's all I can say, Mr. Martinez.
Can you indicate if the vehicle was serviceable or unserviceable?
It was a functional vehicle.
Do you have any idea how much the vehicle was purchased for?
I have no idea, Mr. Martinez.
Do you know how much the vehicle was sold for?
I have no idea, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sure.
Questions? As it relates to the verification of whether the parcels were national land or otherwise, are you familiar with what that verification process is to determine whether it was national land or not?
As far as my knowledge could go, we have in this country, as it pertains to land, different kinds of documentations. We have what is called a declared land. We have what is called undeclared land. So that each of those documents carry a different level of transaction in terms of documentation. The system is not automated, Mr. Blake. The information from the 1930s, the 1940s, the 1950s, it is not one that we have readily available at the Lands Department. So that in many instances, we have to go back to the ledgers, to the old books. And so it is a tedious process. So that whenever you want to apply for a parcel of land, you will find that there are instances, Mr. Blake, where it would be time-consuming to actually find out the status of the land, because the land department does not possess the data readily to indicate whether the land is national land or not.
Would surveyors be involved in that process at any point?
I really don't know. I really won't be able to tell you if surveyors are involved.
Okay. So taking from your statement just now that it would take quite a bit of time to go back through all of those old records, how is it that you'd be able to put in place a process where you could actually achieve a one-day approval?
It depends on the status of the lands. Declared land would be faster on us to be able to procure. Undeclared land would take some time. It is not the entire country that has that kind of issues, Mr. Blake. There are certain areas within the country that we would have those issues.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Pat?
Yes, Mr. Martinez.
Who is Deputy Commissioner Livan? What role would he play in these transactions?
He would be involved in terms of the processing of those applications.
Yes, the former Lands Commissioner, Lands and Survey Commissioner, do you know if he had the authority to transfer lands and to act sometimes on your behalf?
Not that I am aware of.
Can you explain his role? You said that you couldn't have explained the entire policy because you're not technically inclined to most of the sections in your ministry, but I'm sure that you should be able to tell us what role would the Lands and Survey Commissioner play in all of this?
Whenever application, let us go back to the application of Mr. Martinez. When Mr. Martinez makes his application, it is the Commissioner of Lands that actually at the end of the day would say, look, all the checklists have been met. If there is an issue, it is the Commissioner of Land who ultimately would identify if there is an issue or if there is any concerns that he might have with reference to the application that Mr. Martinez has made, then it would be on his purview. The Commissioner of Land is probably the most, at the time, he was probably the most technically knowledgeable person that we had at the ministry.
One more time, do you know Zurong Lee or Kevin Lee?
I have indicated to you once, I have indicated, and I will indicate to you twice. I do not know Mr. Lee, sir.
The former Lands Commissioner, would you tell us if he would have any knowledge in all of these land acquisition that occurred in favor of Mr. Lee? Would you be able to?
I cannot really tell.
Thank you very much.
I just have one last question, Mr.
Yes,
Pat.
Mr. Chairman.
Does it concern you any that the contract for the sale of, or for the purchase of the car with the government could disqualify you as a member of the House if dispensation from the Governor General was not sought in order to enter that contract?
Could you repeat that?
Does it concern you any that the contract with the government for the acquisition of the vehicle would disqualify you as a sitting member of the House? You see, sitting members may only enter into contracts with the government with the permission of Governor General. The Constitution is very clear on it.
Mr. Chairman, as far as I'm concerned, I made a request and for a purchase of a vehicle. In my knowledge, that was a legal transaction.
Yes, and putting it in the name of Mr. Herrera had nothing to do with these considerations.
At the time, I had made a request to see whether the vehicle could come in the name of Mr. Harrier, and I was informed that, yes, that could have been done.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Pat, for coming and sharing with us this morning. I think that's the questions that we have. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, it's my pleasure, and you guys have a pleasant day.
Yes. Thank you.
Is it?
Okay.
At the moment which marked 100 days of the new government of the People's United Party in office, Prime Minister John Briceño was in the remote communities of San Jose and Santa Cruz in the Toledo district. There he inspected a new bridge which will allow critical movement between those villages, built in the past weeks but not in the past 13 years of prior administration. That bridge, one of South, was a priority of the Ministry of Infrastructure Development and Housing, led by Julius Espat. The ministry has led an unprecedented surge of structured, efficient infrastructure works. The PUP entered office to be met with multiple disasters: 2 storms which led to massive flooding, a pandemic which precipitated economic ruin, and a past administration which left no money and no plans.
We are responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of our road infrastructure, and presently we have approximately 5,280 miles of road infrastructure, and that includes paved roads and gravel and dirt roads. And with the recent floods and bad weather that we experienced, a lot of these roads we found them in terrible condition, not to speak about a lot of the neglect of the entire road network.
With an emergency allocation of funds from the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Infrastructure Development and Housing has managed to carry out works on a scale not seen in over a decade. To ensure the viability of our industries, which are critical for foreign exchange, there has been an ongoing operation to address the hundreds of miles of sugar roads in the north, as well as banana, citrus, and farm roads in the south and west of the country. There have been major roadworks on our major highways, including the hot paving of a 2-mile stretch of the Philip Golson Highway, the paving of deteriorated stretches of the Southern and George Price highways. Additionally, within weeks of entering office, the new administration found a way of permanently fixing an eroded area of Mile 38 on the George Price Highway. The amount of work done in every corner of the country has been nothing short of incredible. A clear demonstration of what political will, fiscal responsibility, and a determination to succeed can achieve. In less than 100 days, the new government of the People's United Party has achieved what seemed an impossible task just months ago: the containment of the deadly pandemic COVID-19. It didn't require multiple press conferences every week or countless hours spent on TV while our public and private healthcare systems threatened to crash. The new government did what should have been done a long time ago: restructured our testing procedures to clear up backlog, made testing accessible to all Belizeans through the rollout of rapid testing and free mobile testing clinics, hired additional critical staff to proactively monitor and manage the virus, procured additional equipment, and engaged the public and private health sectors in a meaningful and structured collaboration. Through the measures put in place and public participation, there is clear success in the fight against COVID, with vaccines set to arrive in Belize in a matter of weeks.
So we're looking at the end of March or early April, and we are preparing for that. But that also has not stopped us as a ministry to go and look for bilateral agreements with companies directly and to reach out to countries to help us to procure vaccines in that way. Some countries have overbought, let's put it that way. and they have additional and they're willing to sell to other countries. So we've been looking at all of that. We've been looking at even donations from countries that have bought too many, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback.
In less than 100 days, the new government of the People's United Party has restructured the food assistance program to ensure that Belizeans who need help the most are able to get it. Thousands of Belizeans will continue to access this assistance until the economy recovers. Within the same 100 days, the ministry has been able to roll out the BCAT program, cash assistance that will be given to the neediest families over the next 6 months. It was a challenge due to empty coffers, but it needed to be done, and the new government was up to the task. In less than 100 days, the new government of the People's United Party has started to regrow the agricultural sector all across the country. From livestock and chickens, which have already been exported, bringing in valuable foreign exchange, to exploring assistance for new coconut industry, the modernization of the local dairy industry. The thrust of the new Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security is to grow what we eat and eat what we grow. For a government of the PUP and for Plan Belize, the focus must and will be on local production and consumption.
Our campaign of Buy Belize, I think, is very important, because for some reason or the other we have the mindset that everything needs to be imported, that everything that we import is better than what we have here in this country, and that is totally false. That is totally untrue. We have so much here. Our food is fresher, is healthier. I mean, when we import things, you don't even know what you're importing, really. But that is the mindset that a lot of our people have. So it is a challenge to change that, but I do believe that this ministry can do that and can achieve the goals that we have set up.
This is a government on the move, and one that has not wasted a moment in showboating or in focusing on the past administration's reckless spending, corruption, and mismanagement. While working internally to clean up the hotbed of corruption in the Ministry of Natural Resources, within 100 days, a new government of the People's United Party has managed to hand out. One innovative move has been to use the central bank to provide $50 million in loans for businesses, with a view infusing cash into the economy. The government continues to meet with the private sector and social partners at every turn to ensure that all hands are on deck as we chart the nation's path through this unprecedented time. Plan Belize is a visionary agenda, and your new government of the People's United Party will continue the work, always with a view to innovation, transparency, accountability, and good governance. We thank you for your confidence in us. We will not let you down.
These things were possible because we consulted, and we're facing the challenges head-on, using our Plan Belize as our North Star. Let us continue to reach out to each other, especially the many struggling to put food on the table in this difficult time. Week by week, we make progress. Thanks, God bless, and be safe.
Represent Mr. Herrera. So at this time, I will be making an application for a brief adjournment so that I can take instructions and advise Mr. Herrera in terms of how he's going to make representations before the inquiry. And I crave your indulgence on that.
How long do you need, Mr. Bennett?
Perhaps until Wednesday next week.
We don't
or
have...
whichever date is convenient, but...
Sorry. As I understand it, Mr. Bennett, really the only objection available to Mr. Herrera is to refuse to answer questions on the basis that he might incriminate himself. And we respect that. That's a decision that deserves serious consideration. But I'm not so sure that we can accommodate the request till the next time. Maybe we can push it down through later today. Do you think you can get appropriate instructions during the course of the day?
Well, I will also be appearing as counsel for Mr. Zurong Lee, who is also a witness before, who will be appearing before the commission, I very much doubt that that would be sufficient time for me to take instructions and to properly advise him.
We had a very tight day schedule today, and that, of course, would disrupt the proceedings as planned. We'd have to, let me think about it and see what arrangements can be made. I certainly appreciate the need for legal advice, and I know your clients will have to thread some needles. So I appreciate that you want to speak with them. It's unfortunate they didn't do it earlier. Let me confer with commissioners and we'll see if the request can be accommodated.
Very well. Inform me that March 3rd should be elections as well. So
Yes. But
municipal elections.
I need to see when this premises is available. Where's Ron? How does that look for you? Sufficient time? Yes. March 10th at 9.
March 10th. Thank you.
And is Mr. Lee here? Just so we can get his request on the record.
I believe he was scheduled for 10:30, but
Yes.
I can inform him that he can make his way over now.
Yes, but you say the request is the same for him. You intend to make the same
not
request?
from Mr. Lee. He will make representations before the inquiry.
All right, I understood you were asking for time for him too.
No, just Mr. Herrera.
Just for Mr. Herrera. Okay. Well, that's good. So what we'll do then is we will give you until March 10th for Mr.
May we
Herrera.
be excused?
Yes, and we'll ask you if you can to bring on Mr. Lee a little quicker.
Very well. I'll get in touch with
We'll
him
break
right now.
and wait for him. morning again. Could you just for the record identify yourselves?
May it please the Commission, my name is Andrew Bennett. I appear as counsel for Mr. Zurong Lee. To my right is Mr. Zurong Lee.
Thanks. Mr. Lee, do you wish to swear on the Bible or affirm?
Sure.
Hold the Bible on your right hand and could you read it?
I, Zurong Lee, swear affirm that testimony I shall give today before the Commission in the matters in question shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you, Mr. Could you, for the record again, state your full name and your address?
My full name is Zurong Lee, but they know me as Kelvin Lee.
Zurong Lee.
Of number 3 2nd Street or Coconut Drive, San Pedro.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Lee?
Businessman, sir.
What kind of business do you do?
I import wines and spirits in the country, stationeries and
Stationaries. You do a lot of business on San Pedro?
I live there.
You
I
live
have a
there?
business there too, as well.
Yes. Do you know Mr. Hugo Pat?
No,
You've never met him?
no.
And Mr. Hoven, do you know him?
Yes.
How do you know Mr. Herrera?
Mr. Herrera helped me renovated my warehouse before during the COVID, and that's how I know him.
You arranged the payment for the government to release of some monies for Mr. Herrera.
Yes, sir.
How did that come to be?
He approached me to extend assistance for him, which I agreed. And at the same time, I have some money that was going to pay back to me. So instead of go direct to me, then give it to Hovenso, I instructed Mr. Torres and Marine Services to make the direct payment to the government, Gallardo. But the one that I deal with is the manager there. But I don't want to call.
Well, I'm asking you his name. What's his name?
Should I answer that? I have to answer that? Well, I deal with Miss Sandra.
You deal with Miss Sandra?
Yeah,
Miss Sandra what?
I know her, Miss Sandra.
So you don't know her last name?
No.
In the course of your dealings in importing and selling wines and spirits in San Pedro,
Yes.
you earn a lot of foreign currency?
What do you mean? Like US dollars?
US dollars, sir.
Well, they pay US dollars there sometime, you know.
And do you make the foreign currency you earn through your business available to others?
What is the relevance of that question, Mr. Chairman?
It's very relevant. But relevance is not an issue. You may, if you wish, invoke the privilege against self-incrimination. That is the limit of what's available to you. It's not a trial.
Mr. Chairman, this is an inquiry into the sale of government assets.
Yes.
What is Mr. Lee's business arrangements is within the purview of his business arrangements.
His business arrangements are very much intertwined in the purchase of a government vehicle which was approved to the Deputy Prime Minister of this country.
Well,
Mr. Lee will answer the question.
well, I will beg to decline for my client to
It's
answer
not
that
open
question.
to you to decline. You decline, you refuse to answer on the pain of
Well, I will
criminal
advise
sanction.
my client to refuse to answer that question.
You will advise him to refuse to answer that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Do you do so on the basis that he might incriminate himself if he answers it?
I advise my client not to answer that question.
Are you invoking the privilege against self-incrimination?
There is no issue of incrimination, but he has the liberty
Well, that's the
to
only
decline.
basis on which you can decline to answer. You're obliged to answer. We're compelling you to answer. Isn't it the case, Mr. Lee, that you sold foreign currency to Mr. Torres and to Marina Services and directed the payment of the Belize dollars to the government of Belize?
Of course not.
Of course not. You directed this payment to the government of Belize as the proceeds of a loan to Mr. Herrera.
Yes.
What were the terms of that loan?
Well, he basically asked me for the loan, and he said he would pay me back within 3 months. In exchange, that he will assist me when I build my house.
Has Mr. Herrera repaid the loan?
Yes.
He has.
Yes.
How did he repay it?
He bring it to me.
In cash?
Yes.
$65,000?
Yes.
And what did you do with the cash?
I put it back in my bank, I believe.
In the bank? Could you give us an approximate date and time?
I cannot recall because I'm always busy. You know, I always dealing with business, so I cannot record.
Who do you bank with?
Atlantic Bank?
Atlantic Bank. So Atlantic Bank would have the records of this $65,000 cash deposit?
Sure.
Can you assist us with the month in which this cash deposit was made?
I'm really not sure. I cannot recall.
Was it in November 2020?
I believe the gentleman has answered he cannot recall.
And I believe I'm probing his memory, Mr. Bennett. Was it November 2020?
I believe it should be like December.
So it was in December 2020, more or less, as far as you're able to recall.
Yeah.
Do you remember where you met Mr. Herrera for the delivery of this $65,000 cash?
He came to my office.
Where's your office?
Euphrates.
This is Euphrates.
No.
You didn't ask him what he wanted $65,000 for?
No, he just asked me for a loan, and he said to the government, and I said to the government, that's fine.
He did not explain to you that he himself was making a loan of $65,000 to Mr. Hugo Pat?
No, it doesn't concern me. I would not interfere with him.
You were confident that Mr. Herrera would be in a position to repay you this $65,000?
If I have doubted his personality, I wouldn't lend him.
That's an argument, or was that so? You doubted his personality?
if I would have doubted his personality, I would lend somebody that I
Yes.
will have to trouble for get back the money.
So you didn't doubt his personality?
No.
You consider him a trustworthy person, that he would honor his word to you to repay the money when he said he would?
Yes.
Have you seen news reports about Mr. Herrera before?
No.
No?
No.
Ever been in trouble with the law?
Well, I don't pay attention to when was it.
Well, it goes towards whether or not you had trust. You made any inquiries, any checks about Mr. Herrera's credit risk?
He did work for me. I saw him as an honest guy and extended the assistance to him. That's about it.
Mr. Lee, over the period July 2020 through 3rd November 2020, you purchased some 10 parcels of land from the government of Belize, did you not?
From the government of Belize?
From the government of Belize.
You sure it's not from private individual?
I'm talking about the 10 from the government right now.
Can you point them out?
Sure. 10.299 acres Carmelita on
Yes,
the
that one,
3rd
yes.
November 2020.
Yes, that one I did.
You bought that from the government of Belize?
I applied for it.
And Mr. Hugo Pat approved the purchase and executed the transfer?
You telling me?
Yes, I'm asking you.
I would not know. I applied.
You applied to the government. How did you apply?
I apply at Lands Department.
How do you do that?
At every government department, just go in and apply.
How do you go in and apply?
You could walk in, right?
Yes, you could walk in. And how do you apply?
Get the form, apply.
You get the form and you fill out a form
Yeah.
and you pay some money and you turn in the form.
Pay in money in terms of what?
You're not familiar with the process, Mr. Lee? You've done this many times before?
But you only pay money when they request you to go to the cashier.
No. That application form carries a $5 stamp. And you have to pay for it when you turn it in.
That's why you go to the cashier.
So you go there, you pick up the form, you fill out the form, you pay some monies, and you turn in the forms. Isn't that what you did?
I already said I went, I applied, and when they told me to go to the cashier, pay what I need to pay, I pay, and I go back and hand back the form.
So that's what you did. And you did this in respect of 10.299 acres in Carmelita on what date?
I believe it's in September, October.
And the application was approved on what date?
I believe in November.
And you paid the purchase price on what date?
I don't quite remember.
And you got your title on what date?
I don't remember because I always, there's so many transactions I did, I cannot remember the specific one. You should have the information right there.
I do have it, but I'm asking you.
I do not recall.
You do not recall. Did you go in and pay on the 3rd November 2020 and get your title on the same day?
I do not recall. I don't think I get it in the same day.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
How would you explain it if you got not only that one, but a host of them on the same day you went in?
That's the process of lands. I don't know.
So you figure that's the way they treat all Belizeans?
I would not know. You have to ask the employee or the department in lands.
Do you think you receive favored treatments from the lands department in the processing of these and other transfers?
I cannot say on their behalf.
No,
I don't
I'm
know.
talking about on your behalf.
I just know I go and did my business, and that's about it.
And you get service, and you're able to buy government lands and get your title promptly.
I mean, every Belizean supposed to deserve a service, right? Isn't it?
Sure, but some Belizeans are more deserving than others, apparently.
Well, according to you, if that's the case, then I cannot argue about that.
No, you can. You could tell me that's not so. You could tell me I didn't receive any favored treatment, that I went through the normal process for all of these lots, and they were all approved to me, and I paid my money and got all the titles the same day. And that is how the lands department treat all Belizeans. It's not so.
That's the one, and then which one else?
0.5 half acre San Pedro
Yes, that
on
one.
the
yes.
27th October 2020.
Yes, I did.
You bought that from the government too.
Yes.
And 52.7 acres, 10-pound key registration
No,
section
that's from.
on the 3rd November 2020.
I bought that from third party.
No, from the
I'm
government.
telling
Belize.
you.
Who was the third party you bought it from?
I brought it from, I believe their father and son through a third party. And
Who did you buy it from, Mr. Lee?
I bought it through a third party from.
Yes, that's not an answer. That's just forcing me to ask other questions. Who are the third parties? Who are the persons you bought it from?
Because right now, we are in disclosing information in the public.
Yes, you are.
Whatever I can put someone in danger of they having money. So I can tell you, you have the
Mr. Lee, you bought land that belonged to the people of Belize. The whole public, the same public that you owe an obligation to explain how you got it.
Mr. Chairman, can you look at the files for that 52-acre?
Yes, 52.7 acres.
In Chanchen. That's...
No, in 10-pound key registration section.
That's the area. I planned to have a farm, so they approached me and I bought it.
Who did you buy it from, Mr. Lee?
I have to disclose that information. Well, I bought it to a third-party individual. They contacted the person who owned the land. His name is Elazad Howe.
I will verify it.
Of course, sure.
2.01 acres San Pedro on the 14th of August, bought from the government of Belize.
Yes, that one I did apply.
You bought a land, lot 21, parcel 2114 on Kikaka on the same day, 14th August 2020.
Yes, that one.
And the government approved that to you and transferred to you on the same day.
Yes, that one.
Yes. And another lot on San Pedro on the 27th July 2020.
Which one?
Parcel 8483.
No, that's from a third party again.
And parcel 8673 San Pedro on the 13th August 2020.
That's from a third party again.
And parcel 8564 San Pedro registration section on the 23rd July 2020.
8564? I can't remember that one.
And parcel 6807 San Pedro registration section on the 27th July 2020.
That's from a third party again.
And parcel, sorry, 6791 is what I said. That's the next one. Parcel 6791 San Pedro registration on the 24th July 2020.
That's from third party.
That's what you say.
You can check the documents, sir.
I have checked them, Mr. Lee.
Mr. Chairman.
And parcel 6816 San Pedro.
Which one?
6816 was done earlier.
That's the same third party. Mr. Chairman, when they are...
I will get to the third party transfers. So these transfers, the records show, were direct purchases from the government of Belize.
I'm going to explain right now.
Okay.
So I have people contacted me that they already paid the purchase price and that they want to sell the property. because it's getting rough, with the COVID. So, I told them, it's tough time. I would not buy unless it's a good deal. And they offer me the price, and I said, oh, it's good deal, so I can buy it and just put it aside.
So you pay them and they procure the transfer directly from government to you?
No, they show me a purchase price that they already paid.
And so you buy it from them, you pay them, and then you have them have the government transfer it to you instead of to them?
Yes, you can do that.
No, I'm asking you if that's what you did. If
Yes.
that's what you were explaining as through purchasing through a third party.
Yes.
Yes. That's why the records show that it was a direct transfer from the government,
Yes.
I believe, to you. But you
Yeah,
saying...
because if the title come out in their name, right, and then go back to my name, so you take a
you
longer
have to
process.
pay taxes.
You take a longer process. So we pay...
But not for you, Mr. Lee. You get that done in one day. Do you want the list of those transactions?
In one day?
One day.
I don't know.
Same day.
I don't know.
You don't know? You've never had a transfer start and finish in one day, and you walk away with title the same day?
I don't record.
You don't recall. The third parties who you bought the lots from San Pedro from, who were they? Let's go down. You seem to have a good recollection of it.
So, some friend of mine, I don't want to disclose their name, honestly.
But I'm asking you their names, Mr. Lee. You see, because we need to know who is going to the government of Belize and applying for lands and turning around even before it's transferred to them, selling it to you. We need to know who these people are. So please tell us who they are.
I choose not to answer that one because I don't want to disclose any of this information in the public.
This is a public inquiry. Those lands belong to the public.
Of course.
You bought them from the public. How are you not going to tell the public?
I just said I bought it from private individuals.
Who were in the process of acquiring it from the people of Belize. This is not private property that was vested in private people that you're negotiating privately for.
Of course, they already paid the purchase price, so I can...
And you took a transfer from the government of Belize. And this is why you're subjected to this inquiry and you're being asked these questions.
But if
and I am testing, Mr. Lee, the truth of what you're saying. And the way to test that is for you to provide me the details of those transactions so that I'm satisfied that you're not making it up. So please tell us who you bought each one from and when.
If I knew it would be a problem, I would have rather them to take the time.
Well, maybe you should have, but you didn't. So please tell us who you bought it from and when.
I have to... Can I choose not to. I choose not to disclose those informations.
You choose not to disclose those informations?
Yes.
You mean you're refusing to answer the question? That's what you're saying. You see, this will have repercussions, Mr. Lee, and you need to understand that. You choose not to answer the question.
Can I? These people work at departments or corporate officers. I don't want to disclose their name. Don't regard other names who I bought it from.
So now you don't remember?
I believe that you guys should have the information right there. But I can, check and provide the information later.
You also bought parcel 2120 from Isaias Franco.
That one, the guy approached me during the lockdown.
Yes.
And he said his wife needed an emergency
Yes.
operation, and he sold me that land. You could contact
And that
him.
was on the 19th October 2020.
Huh?
On the 19th October 2020.
But I remember it was during a night, my ex-worker contacted me that his friend has a piece of land that he wanted to sell me. I say, I don't want it because, right now it's tough. I don't want to buy any land. And he say, boss, the guy's wife is sick. He needed an operation and need to leave the country. So I say, anyway, I will take it and do him the favor.
How much did you pay him for the land for that favor that he did for you? That you did for him, sorry?
I believe it's around 13,000 or something like that.
$13,000.
I would
And is
believe
that the price you generally pay for these lots?
You can contact the guy.
Yes, we might do that. You delivered the transfer to the Lands Department on the 19th October 2020,
I don't quite remember the exact date.
and you received your new title on the same day, 19th October 2020.
I don't remember.
It's possible.
If you say, then I guess.
You also bought lots from the Castro brothers.
Oh yes, the bigger brother approached me and say, my little brother have property for sale. Are you interested? And I say, yeah, sure.
And you paid them 13,000 each too?
I think those one is around 20,000 or something like that.
These ones are better than Mr. Franco's one?
Yeah.
And you also bought one from Miss Rossell Usher, parcel 6827?
Yes, I do.
Yes. And you lodged that transfer on the 14th October 2020?
I cannot remember with so many transactions I did.
And you got it back on the same day?
If the paper says that, then I don't know.
And this was another land you didn't want, that you were doing favors for?
Of course.
Miss Usher works in the Lands Department.
They approached me about it, and I say I really don't want the property. But I told them that, I would take it, and then in case in the future I would sell it, then, I would, whatever profit we
And you gave her the 20,000 for her lot too?
I think I gave her 15 or something like that.
Okay. And parcel 8482, you bought from Melanie Guerra. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
Same thing, you didn't want it either?
No, that one, yes.
You wanted that one?
Yes.
Yeah. You paid a good price for it, I take it.
I believe it's 20 something. I don't quite remember.
20 something. And you also bought a piece from Ismael Novello.
Isn't that that's the same one?
12578.
Oh, which one
different
you?
piece.
The first Ismael. Which one is it? Ismael what?
Novello.
No, the
On the
previous.
24th September 2020.
The previous Ismael. I thought this is the same Ismael.
I don't know who Ismael is. You
This
should
one
know
is the
them
one.
now.
No, this one is the one that wife sick.
That's the one that the wife sick?
Yes.
Well, the first one was Isaias Franco. It wasn't Ishmael. It was
that's-
Isaias.
That's the one in Kikaka, I believe, right?
No, that's San Pedro. All of these are San Pedro.
I don't remember.
How many lots do you own in San Pedro?
Enough, Mr. Chairman.
How much is enough?
I don't record.
20? 30?
I don't know. I don't have the exact number.
What's the number more or less?
Honestly, about 20 something. I don't know.
About 20 something.
I don't know.
And you bought another piece from Isabel Chi,
Yes.
24th September 2020.
Yes.
And another piece from Kirian Asweta.
Yes, that one, Mr. Asweta approached me that because they showed me the land before.
And Mr. Gilberto Campos, you bought piece from him too?
Yes, that's the one,
Consejo.
yes.
Yes, on the 24th
And the one
September.
with, the one with Mr. Asweta one, and you can go and check the resident who lived there. Mr. Asweta sold me the land.
And all of these were done on the 24th September.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
let me finish with this one.
Okay.
Mr. Asweta sold me this property. When I find out that there are people who live on that property, I immediately went because they were evacuate the people that live there.
I think you mean evict.
Oh, yeah. So the lady who lives residing on that property had a stroke. And when the news got to me, right away I went to the family. The lady wasn't there. She was in Cayo getting taken care of. And I promised the niece, the granddaughter, that I would try my best to have government relocate me and have the government give them that piece of land, because I would not want that land they live on, because that's the only thing they had, they told me.
Yes. So what did you do in response to that? You went to see your friend, Mr. Hugo Pat?
No. I believe I got the title after election.
Or was it Deputy Commissioner Liver?
Sir, I'm telling you what I know.
Yes, you said you promised the lady that you would make sure the government relocate them because you didn't want to dispossess poor people of their lands in San Pedro. Is that what you're saying?
You can check with the people if I did a visit, and I even went to as far as lands to see how can we, give
You
this.
didn't want to dispossess poor people of their lands in San Pedro. That was your concern?
Yes.
Yes. You bought a piece from Mr. Gilberto Campos?
Yes.
Consejo, 24th September 2020. And then if you go back a little more, you also bought a piece from Lijo Vigildo Vasquez?
That piece of property, I bought that from the bank. The old man owns that property, I believe, over 15 years. The bank about to take away his house. He approached me and asked me if I can help him out.
Yes.
And that's 2 years ago, I believe.
Yes, it's 2 years ago. You have a very good memory. That one was to test the memory.
Because I remember.
And what about Mr. Sergio Hall? That one was a ways back too?
Mr. Sergio, I know him for years, and he asked me if I'm going to buy that land. And I say, I don't live in Corosa, I don't have no use of it. But he said, please, man, it's really rough for me. And I bought the land.
I see a repeating pattern. All of these poor Belizeans coming and forcing their lands on you, Mr. Lee.
Mr. Chairman.
You don't even want it and you end up buying them.
Mr. Chairman, I'm telling you the truth, but you just...
No, I'm trying to get to the truth. Isn't that what you're doing? That's what you're describing to me. That's what I'm hearing.
But contact Mr. Howe, contact Ishmael, see if the story...
So it was all to help these people. It wasn't about getting these lots in San Pedro, these 20 plus lots you own.
I mean, if there's a deal, I'm a businessman. If they offer me a good price,
so
and I
now we get to it. You're also in the business of buying and selling lands.
And,
Are you?
Yes.
Yes. And in the course of the conduct of that business, you come into regular contact with the lands department, do you not?
Repeat that again?
In the course of the conduct of your business of buying and selling land, you come into regular contact with the lands department in Belmopan.
What do you mean by regular contact? Often?
Yes. Who do you deal with in Belmopan?
The front desk.
Who do you deal with in Belmopan?
I don't know the name of them. I go into the department.
You dealt with Mr. Hugo Pat?
No.
You dealt with Mr. Liver?
No.
Never dealt with them before.
No.
Don't know who they are.
I know who they are.
Who are they?
Mr. Pat is the ex-deputy prime minister.
And Mr. Liver?
He works in the lands department.
Where in the lands department?
I don't know. I don't know.
Isn't he one of these persons that are facilitating these applications, these very many applications you get approved through the department on a regular basis?
I don't know.
You don't know, or you don't want to say?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know.
You don't know. Who in the lands department is helping you with these same-day transfers?
No one.
Nobody is helping you.
No, sir.
How do you explain that even the lands department in its report says you must have help to get this kind of thing done so quickly?
Well,
how do you explain that?
If that's what they say, I don't know what to explain.
You don't know what to explain, or you
Mr.
don't
Lee
want
cannot
to
explain what goes on in the lands department.
No, what goes on when he goes there and his relationship with Mr. Pat, which he keeps denying.
He has already answered that question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, he has, and I'm testing the answer. I can ask it more than once. You see, especially if I don't believe him, which I don't. Do you know Mr. Hugo Pat?
No, sir.
Has he been helping you with your land transfers?
No, sir.
Do you know Mr. Liver?
Mr. Liver?
Yes, Mr. Liver.
I know he works at lands.
Yes, has he been helping you with your land transfers?
I don't think so.
Did Mr. Hugo Pat contact you and ask you to pay for the Toyota Tacoma on his behalf?
No, sir.
Did Mr. Liver contact you and ask you to pay for the Toyota on Mr. Hugo Pat's behalf?
No, sir.
I have nothing for you.
The transactions that have been listed before you, all those transactions were done in cash or through the banking system?
Most of the time, these people prefer cash. I would suggest, that they take a transfer or check, and most of them, they prefer cash. And some of them, of course, you have to do the online transfer, especially buying from the bank and stuff like that. They would prefer a check or transfer,
So what percentage of those transactions would you say were handled in cash versus going through the banking system?
I don't recall, because when they needed cash, I go to my bank and withdraw the money and, pay them.
Look.
Sure. Mr. Lee,
Yes, sir.
can you have explained what are some of the businesses that you conduct in Belize? You said that you're a businessman. Are you in the business of real estate?
My main business is an importer of
Yes.
alcoholic beverages.
Are you in the business of real estate?
If someone approach me to buy, then, if he makes money, then I will sell it, my property,
So just answer me yes or no. Are you in the business of real estate?
Realtor.
I'm not asking you if you are a realtor. I'm asking you if you are in the business of real estate.
Commissioner,
Just answer the question.
Perhaps if you can elaborate a bit.
The buying and selling of land, particularly in this case.
When there's a good deal, I buy, and then if someone asks me, you want to sell the property, then if I see that there's a convincing price, then I would sell, you know.
So your answer is yes. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Do you know, say I'm a businessman, and I ask you, well, I've seen here that you are well experienced in conducting land transaction. Can you explain to me what are some of the ways, how can I go about acquiring as many lands as you? Help me through the process.
Private land you're talking about?
Government land, private land, help me through the process. What you do, what happens when you go to the lands department?
Oh, with lands department,
Yes.
you would have to consult it with the land department's employee or the consultants. I honestly cannot tell on their behalf what they did, how they did it.
So when you go, what is your experience?
Well, honestly, sometimes it's frustrating. You go, a long line is there. And sometimes it's tough, you know, to see older people are there online as well. And then, but
How many officers at the lands department you have to see to get a land in a parcel of land in one day?
I honestly would not know, because I didn't realize that if according to you, I got land in one day.
You are aware of the process, the formal process?
But they know that they have an expediting process.
Yes, explain that process to me, how it works.
You can pay the $500 to get your title right away.
To who?
To the department. There's a fee. It's just like you're going to immigration. You're going to immigration. There's a sign that told you, you know, what is the express fee, and if you're willing to pay the express fee, which is especially for emergency, they would accept it, you know.
The officers help you?
No, that's the standard fees for the department.
Okay. So that is one part of the process. You pay for your application. Continue.
No. This is like when your title is almost ready. You pay when you apply for transfer. You can request for pay the $550. So then they can, at the $500, they can expedite your title.
Yeah. How quick is that?
I don't know.
Hours, days, weeks, months?
I don't know. I paid the $500, and when they finish it, they finish it.
So, but that program was done away with. It started and it was suspended. How were you able to?
I honestly, I don't know.
You don't know. Do you know the Deputy Commissioner Leiva?
Yes, I already answered that.
I am asking him.
Do
you know him?
I think I already answered the question. I know who he is, where he works, but I don't have a relationship with him.
Do you know the former Minister Pat?
No.
You don't know him?
I don't know him.
So if I show you a footage of you and Mr. Leiva at the Lands Department in the corridor having what seems to be
a
discussion, if I show you here,
but
would you be able to tell me if these two individuals are you and Mr. Leiva in this discussion?
Me or Mr. Leiva or Mr. Pat?
Both of you.
No, I don't.
So
I don't.
You will not be able to identify these two individuals if I.
If I can identify the individual.
One of them is you, and the other person is Mr. Leiva. If I show you, will you?
If I talk to him I always visit lands. Then remember, I say, I know where he works. I know who he is, and if he, I saw him, I would. If I make a conversation with him, it wouldn't make me and him as a friend, right? I talk to everyone.
Do you know Mr. Pat?
No,
do you
sir.
know him? And if I show you a footage of you and Mr. Pat at the Lands Department, will you be able to identify yourselves?
Yes.
So and on numerous occasions, and yet you don't know him?
No. I don't meet with Mr. Pat at all.
I have if I show you, I will have to see that to record it.
Commissioner, could you turn the laptop around so that we can see the image that
I
you're
would
referring
invite
to?
him to come and see it.
Can I go and see?
With your permission.
Come. Yes, no, come on, no. Are you the boy? It's not starting up as soon as I get it started, but I have some other questions for Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, is there anyone at the Lands Department that you know besides Mr. Pat and Mr. Leiva?
I already said I don't know Mr. Pat. I know who Mr. Leiva is, but I don't have a relation. I don't know him as a friend.
Let's go to the payment for the vehicle.
Yes. I believe this is what I'm here for, right?
Yes. Are you aware of any policy that deals with the sale of government vehicles?
If I would have known that paying direct...
Mr. Lee has no interest.
I am asking
whether in the
Mr. Lee a
past
question.
or the present in respect of any vehicle that you're referring to, Mr. Commissioner.
Yes.
Yeah, so I am telling you, if I would have known for helping, offer this loan and pay to the government, which I think, wouldn't be a problem. If I would know, you think I would do it? No, I wouldn't. Why would I get myself into this mess?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, one more question. When you purchase lands from government, how do you know that these lands are available?
What do you mean?
How do you know when a government land is available? Do you have, how you get that information?
I mean, they are researchers in the lands departments that works there, alongside with lands department. So these people, you can ask them, to say, hey, I'm interested in this specific area, can you make a research, right, Mr. Bennett? And to provide you information on lands and stuff like that.
So you drive around your
No,
neighborhood
man.
to
You
find
you don't need to drive around. You just
available-
go to see the researchers.
And that is how you know that those lands are available.
Yes.
Nobody from lands department,
No.
the farmer commissioner, the deputy commissioner, the farmer minister, none of them called you and said,
No.
look, we have a piece of land that is available. None of them.
No.
So you just take it upon yourself to find out from the researchers if there are available land.
I already say that.
Are these researchers employees at the lands department?
No, those are private practice.
Have you ever paid any additional money to any public officer to assist you to acquire these lands? Or
No,
to
sir.
expedite the process?
The expediting part is you pay the
Yes.
lands department itself.
Yes.
No officers.
You know what merdida means?
I would need you to explain that.
You ever pay anybody something on the side to assist you?
I already say that, sir.
Thank you very much.
Insurance, Lee.
Generally, there's a recommendation when you're acquiring public land. Who would have recommended for you to get these properties that you bought from the government?
I believe I got couple recommendation from the area rep in San Pedro for my San Pedro land, and I believe it's the one from Orindra Carmelita as well. I get it from the area rep as well.
Can you provide receipts for these land transactions, especially the expedited ones?
No, when I got my title, careful, it's my title and the map behind it. All the rest I throw it away.
So you are a businessman who isn't interested in receipts?
No, it's not about interested in receipt. I know I got my receipt, that's why I got my document.
Yes.
Once I get back my
Can you provide the receipt for the expedited
Mr.
transactions?
Mr. Commissioner, I just told you, sir, that when I got my title, I keep the title. Whatever receipt, I don't need it. Same thing, similar, when I go to a law firm, if a law firm process my title, when they give me my title, I don't interest in give me.
So you cannot provide the receipts
I don't
if I
have
were
them.
to ask you for the receipts?
I don't have them, sir. But whatever I pay for, they should have a copy. You guys should have it, right?
Yes. This means that if I were to verify at the lands department to see if you had indeed paid for expedited process, I should find the receipt.
Yes, sir.
That is what you are saying?
Yes, sir.
Finish?
No?
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I think, yeah, those are all our questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you.
The Ministry of Human Development, Families and Indigenous Peoples Affairs may not be the most visible entity, but it is arguably the most important. As its name states, it is responsible for the development and well-being of each individual and the family unit, and it is the ministry that is called to action when things go drastically wrong. CEO Tanya Santos, appointed recently as part of the new team at the ministry, explained that it was important to identify priority areas to deal with right away, and one of those areas was the Princess Royal Youth Hostel. The hostel, located at mile 21 on the George Price Highway, has been in the news frequently, and rarely in a positive light. Several years ago, 3 female residents burned to death there, and the facility has been the scene of riots, controversy, chaos, and multiple escapes. But the new administration has hit the ground running.
We have started to, clean off the compound. We've identified the infrastructural challenges. One of the first things we saw was the bathrooms in which the residents at the hostel were using. We're already starting with the repairs of those. We are looking at, they also have issue with water. Apparently it's an issue that has been happening over years where pumps fail and all of that. And so the last time we were there, the boys were bathing out of buckets essentially. We've brought in an engineer who has looked at the entire system and has made recommendations on how to improve that.
Santos says that despite the dire economic times, they were able to source funding through the Ministry of Finance for the infrastructural improvements to the building. But there is much more planned, with a view to the rehabilitation rather than the incarceration of the residents.
We want to have better, stronger programs that will help them to rehabilitate, for lack of a better word, that will help them to change the mindset as much as possible so that when they return out, they are better able to cope with the changes out there that they're going back to. We want to have more programs that will involve more education, maybe some skills training, some personal development, life skills as well, and where the plan is to get somebody in there to formalize all of that in a strong curriculum for the residents.
Another area of immediate priority was the food assistance program, which was in place. There was the need for urgent attention, with a view to depoliticizing the initiative and directing it to those who need the help the most.
We had found that there were people on that list who were receiving food who did not need it. And in some instances, there were households that were receiving more than one who did not even deserve to have one basket of food. And what that does is it shortchanges those who are actually in need. Those who actually need were not many who actually qualified and could have benefited better from it did not get.
That discovery led to an immediate assessment and restructuring. Santos said that the ministry had to be creative, but discontinuing the program was never an option. And where there is a political will, there is always a way.
Well, in the last 2 weeks, we have actually managed to issue about 10,000 food packages throughout the country. If you haven't received in your area and you've been called already, it's probably because we just haven't rolled it out, because it's a staggered process. And this will continue up to the end of the financial year, but the intention is that in the new financial year, we will continue the program.
Particularly in these perilous economic times, that news will be welcomed by many. And there's more. Just 100 days in office, the government of Belize has also rolled out a cash assistance initiative called BCCT, the Belize COVID Cash Transfer Program.
It is a program that provides cash assistance to eligible households in Belize throughout the country, and households will be paid, those who qualify will be paid every 2 months, roughly about $300, just a little something to help you get by in these trying times. It gives a level of comfort to know that we are shifting focus to those who are mostly suffering out there, who are suffering the most, and who are feeling the brunt of it. Even though we have limited reach that we can achieve right now, it is a process that will continue. It is support that will continue in whatever form it takes.
Morning, Mr. Perdomo. Would you like to swear or affirm? You swear?
Swear, sir.
Would you take the Bible in your right hand and just repeat the words on the form in front of you?
Bible for you one.
Yes.
I, Said Perdomo, swear that the testimony I shall give today before the commission in the matters in question shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you. Mr. Perdomo, could you state your name and address for the record?
Said Perdomo, 33 Freetown Road is my address.
Yeah. What do you do for a living, Mr. Perdomo?
I co-own a cell phone company, and I own Car Guys Belize Limited.
Yes.
Auto dealership, if you may, car dealer.
Mr. Perdomo, you're familiar with Toyota Tacoma that belonged to the government of Belize?
Of course.
Yes. What was your involvement with that Tacoma?
They gave me for sale. Or they actually, I was offered to buy it, not from the government.
Who is they?
December 1st, I was contacted by gentleman Ivan Liva.
Ivan Liva?
Yes, sir. And he told me that he has a friend who wants to sell a Tacoma. And if I was interested in buying or selling it for him, because, you know, he don't really, he'd try to help out the person, sell it then. For whatever reason, I told him I need to see the vehicle. You know, I can't diagnose the patient over the phone. need for say.
And did you go see the vehicle?
Actually, he told me the vehicle was in Orange Walk, and I went for it December 2nd, which was the following day, and I picked up the vehicle.
Where in Orange Walk did you go for the vehicle?
I believe it was at his parents' residence, Ivan's parents, because he said the owner left it with him for sale, no?
Ivan Laiva is the Deputy Commissioner of Lands?
I believe so, but I don't know him. I knew him before that. So we picked up the vehicle on the 2nd. I documented everything for him, the scratches, you know, checked the whole engine, make sure everything documented, the mileage. I packed the glove compartment, checked for insurance, and I found a title that said Jovencio Herrera from Belmopan City Council. So we then took the vehicle back to Belize City, and we began to work on it, do what we do.
Did there come a time when Mr. Herrera transferred that vehicle to you?
Yes, sir.
How did that happen?
Well, we took in the vehicle, like I said, on December 2nd, and we had it for roughly 48 days before we got a sale on it. Because originally, we take in a vehicle, we fix it up, enhance it, invest in it, whatever. You tell me how much you want, we get what we could get, and then we contact you when the time for sale. So, my partner, my associate, Mr. Badio from Prestige Motors, he called me on January 8th, and he told me, boy, we have 2 people interested in the vehicle. And they are going to see it over the weekend, and by Monday we should have an answer. My reply to him was, well, you have 3, because I want the vehicle now. When I get the vehicle December 2nd, I couldn't afford it at the time, but I was interested at that time. So he called me the 11th, and he told me we need to get one transfer done. So I contacted Mr. Laiva, and he gave me some numbers for Jovencio. And I contacted him and told him I was coming to Belmopan so he could sign the transfer because we have an interested buyer. Went to Belmopan, met at the traffic department, and they refused to do an open transfer. So if I could stick up in there, an open transfer is useful because, for example, if you come buy a vehicle from me, and you give me a deposit, maybe that vehicle not going to Mr. Marshall name, maybe going to a wife name, maybe they try to surprise a wife or whatever, no? So we just get it open, and Belmopan City Council refused to do it, no problem. I tell them put it in my name. Which at the problem, at the time, I had the agent, no problem with that.
No?
And if they never want to buy it, I'll buy it anyway. As I'm just sell my personal vehicle.
Yes.
So I never had a problem with that.
So it was transferred to you?
Yes, January, I have the timeline later. I have everything. January 12th.
And then you transferred it to the buyer?
Yes, sir.
How much was the car sold for?
I believe it was, well, I wasn't the main agent on it, but I believe it was 80,000, I'm not sure. Somewhere around that time. But at the time, Mr. Laiva indicated to me that Mr. Jovencio, he just wants to recover his money for whatever reason, that's never my business, which was $65,000 plus license and insurance, come up to like 66. So I explained to him that you have 2 options. You left the truck with we sell it, we enhance it, we invest in it, and when we sell it, we get back the money and we give you what you want. No problem. They never had time to deal with it. So here I have a list of stuff that we did on the truck. If I may.
Okay.
Is that good?
Go ahead.
When you pick up the truck, I mean, we do this for a living. When you pick up the truck, I mean, they're 8 out of 10. And we say, boy, this thing got potential. We could fix it up, but we need money. The man say, Mr. Jovencio, the owner not interested in it, he just want back the money. So we say, fix this up, you come for it, you pay with this. Don't worry about the marketing, we do that for our own. The advertising, we do that for our own. So proceed. Tint, $200, and the wash, Albert, $250, detail, $250. You had one lease suspension, nice. Mechanic charge you $275 for do that. Do a full buff on the vehicle, $250. The bed liner was pretty damaged, and I documented that. And it had some scratches on the vehicle. That came up to like $1,200 to do that full body work. And I noticed it had a dealer sticker inside to service it. So we said, you know what? People like when you hear the vehicle serviced on a dealer, make we just carry it at the Toyota dealer. That came up to like $650. And the driver forgot for the vehicle at Orange Rock. $3,175. We came out of pocket, invested in the vehicle.
The $66,000 that you say Mr. Liver said Mr. Herrera wanted for the car.
You could talk a little louder because of the rain.
The $66,000 that you said Mr. Liver reported that Mr. Herrera wanted for the car. How was that paid?
Cash money.
Who paid it?
Me.
You took it?
Yes, sir.
Who did you deliver it to?
Mr. Liver, on the request of Mr. Herrera.
You spoke to Mr. Herrera about it?
When we transferred, he told me, ask him about the extra key. He said, if anything, just deal with Mr. Liver. You can give Mr. Liver. Because you have to understand, right? The transfer was done to me on the 12th of January. Yeah, the 12th of January. Now the process is when you're the finance through bank, that have to go in at the person's name. That's why I put it in on my name so I could reach a Belize, and when they're ready, boom. The bank, you're not an attorney, you should know that they don't have bill of sale over the vehicle, and then they don't have charge or a lien, and then they disperse funds. So don't matter of trust. Mr. Jovento never get the money January 12th. We had to wait till the bank don't deal with we if make we deal with him.
So when did he get the money?
The 20th.
You took money to Mr. Jovencio?
No, I couldn't get in contact with him. And he already gave me instructions on the 12th. That the only time meeting.
These were oral instructions
Yes,
he
sir.
told you?
Yes, sir.
So you delivered the money cash to Mr. Liver?
Yes, sir. He said, Mr. Liver, if you can't get in contact with him, Mr. Liver will get the money. And he have the keys. That's the only reason Mr. Liver, to be honest, he never really want to get involved. He said he was busy, and I believe he said he was traveling. So
Mr. Liver had the car and had the keys for the car. Is that right?
yes, we picked that up December 2nd.
Mr. Herrera never did have the car.
I don't know that.
Never did have any
I
keys
don't get
to
it
the
from.
car.
I never get it from Mr. Herrera.
Yes.
I never get it from Mr. Herrera.
Mr. Herrera's name was on the title.
Yes, sir. I did. As a car dealer, we have to do our due diligence. When I got the title, I looked at the title. There's something there that always indicate if the person paid duty or not. If you buy from an embassy, if you buy from a diplomat, something like that, they always say, do not transfer this vehicle unless duties
are paid.
I checked that, legit. Run the VIN number, Carfax, legit. No accidents, because we need to know for tell the customers. So they don't got no surprises when they go to the insurance.
Yes.
They do full due diligence, they don't have Venture name. Nothing
Yes.
to do with the government.
So you collected it from Mr. Liver. You took
Yes.
instructions as to the price
From
from
Mr.
Mr.
Liver.
Liver.
Yes, sir.
And you delivered the money to Mr. Liver.
Yes, well that...
The only dealings you had with Mr. Herrera was to sign over the transfer.
Yes.
And you say on that occasion he told you to deal with Mr. Liver with the money.
Yes, if I can give it up from it.
If you can't find him.
Yeah.
And you couldn't find him.
Well, the number I called the man never answered. Even that day, Mr. Liver had to contact him on the 12th.
So Mr. Liver collected the money.
Yes, and I got the keys from him.
And that was $66,000 in cash.
Yes, sir, cash money.
And you got that cash money from
The bank.
the bank.
Yes, sir.
Which bank?
Atlantic Bank check, I believe. Now again, our financial, we owe that to the FIU for check. If people give you cash, we have to document that. You give me cash for this. When they transfer money, that may have form a loan payment, I believe, in the account, we have to produce paperwork. This is how that for. Bam. When that done, we could take with cash. As far as you know, that's a legal thing, I believe.
So the cash came from a legitimate buyer?
Legit.
Yes.
Legit. It was in the banking system, actually.
And it was delivered to Mr. Liver in cash?
Yes.
Any questions, Lou?
No, I just wanted to ask if you were aware of the fact that the vehicle was originally a government vehicle.
Of course, I was aware. Okay. I mean, there were signs that, you know, when you see something, you think it, and then you go and find out. You do one thing afterwards. You know, I never aware at the time, but I know fool, and I know more or less. You know, but legally, it was for Juvencio. Yeah. And that's all I concerned about. Legal, I never know a whole circus that go in the background.
You ever had any discussion with employees from the vehicle care unit, like for example?
Never, ever. I didn't know that day.
Well, all right.
We buy from actions, from embassies all the time, boards, you know. And I never buy from a vehicle care unit, 100% sure.
Oh, good, thanks.
What type of information are you required to disclose to the FIU? I hear you mention the FIU earlier.
Well, we have to keep a log for FIU and basically your business tax. And we have to log who buy and who buy cash. You know, and if we get cash, we have to do with due diligence, do some form of research. You know, we cannot accept cash for anybody off of the street. And then I think we are in the process of doing a manual for FIU. They want car dealers. I mean, you have to understand, car dealers go through a lot, you know. Not everybody have to register with FIU. Few entities have to register with FIU. Every year we have to get our stuff up to mark, because the bank car away, you know, they front and we sometimes. We have to pay $1,500 trade license, dealer license, where our insurance the more. You know, we go through a lot. Police harass with a dealer plate. We go through more than average person. So every transaction we conduct have to be above board. We have several FIU meetings where we go together as car dealers. So, I mean, in a watch way, we have to stay in our lane.
So this log, Mr. Perdomo, you log who you buy it from and who you receive the money from?
Not really, if the cash.
Yes, but you don't log who you give the money to?
No, but I don't have no problem in saying.
Yes.
Clearly.
Mr. Perdomo, when you mentioned that you would have run the vehicle through the system to find out if you have any damage, and so would that include the value of the vehicle?
Yes, I mean we do one valuation. That was my point of doing this.
Yeah. So how much that would be when the vehicle brand new?
When he bring the vehicle to away, like I said, like 8 out of 10. I think we could make like 175, take 73. But when we done with this vehicle, we are close to a 10. Beautiful. Beautiful. So we could have maximized, we could have put it for sale for like 85 and then take 80. You know,
so like the cost of the vehicle in a new state.
In a new state, duty free.
If you have access as a dealer, if you have access to the information.
I believe what Emil Torres sold them was a good deal. About 90,000, 88,000, brand new. That.
Yeah.
How was that duty free price?
Yeah. Still a good deal. I mean, the truck never had leather, and when they sell it, it had close to 40,000 kilometers, why for 50? In less than what you said, 8 months. So that I mean the only drawback it had on high miles on the vehicle. The vehicle had a high miles.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
He had 41,628 kilometers.
kilometers. Yes. That kind of high? I mean, not for a Toyota, I mean, but for the...
Any other question? Are you all right? You all right? Thank you for taking your time, Mr. Perdomo.
And thank you for
You have been
allowing
helpful.
me to clarify
Yes.
everything that's going on out there, sir.
All right.
Thank you
Good,
very
sir.
much.
Yep.